Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm going to be sharing today what I will be reading in November. To make this a little bit more fun, one of the things that I have done is I've gamified the system, or at least my way of choosing the books. And so I am actually going to be using Scattegories, the card game, to choose my TBR. Well, how I'm using the card game is the card comes with red cards, and on the other side of those red cards are letters. And so I'm going to choose one card, and that card is going to give me a letter, and then I have a list of book prompts, and I will have to choose a book that matches that prompt. That's the title of the book starts with that letter. First letter that I drew was the letter C. And the prompt that I picked was a book club read. So I needed to find a book on my bookshelf that starts with the letter C and is something that I would recommend to my family as a book club pick. Okay, so I found one. The book that I picked is Clotel. I have a little bit of a glare. It's a nice sunny day here. And this is subtitled Or the President's Daughter, written by William Wells Brown. This book is basically about the experiences of William Wells Brown. He was a African American slave who escaped slavery in America and became a freedman, and after the age of 22 learned how to read and write and wrote a novel. And this was the novel he wrote. And basically, this novel is a fictional tale that's based on the legend that Thomas Jefferson, while writing about the need and the sacredness of human freedom, owned, sold slaves, and even was rumored to have fathered children by his slaves and have sold one in auction. Clotel is the story of what that would be like for that slave to have been sold in auction. And really, William Wells used this as a tool to really disparage slavery and bring to light the horrors of it and the contradictory teachings and words that were going around at the time. Okay, the next letter that I chose was the letter L. I guess you could say it was chosen for me. It was the next letter I pulled from the deck. And the book prompt that I had, face on the cover. So I needed to choose a book whose title started with the letter L, and the book needed to have a face on the cover. And for that, I chose the book Little Big by John Crowley. This is a book that is based on magical realism and I believe also has romance as a prominent feature. It features two characters who have very fascinating names, Loki Barnable and Bailey Alice Drinkwater. And one of them, I believe Alice, from my understanding, lives in a house. But this house is kind of like a portal. There's something unnatural about it in terms of when you go in the front door of the house, I believe, you actually enter into multiple houses, or there is multiple houses within the house. The next letter that I chose was the letter N. And the prompt that I chose was an author with 5 or more books. So a prolific author. In this case, I looked at my books starting with the letter N and very quickly was able to choose No Name by Wilkie Collins. No Name is about a young woman. Her name is Magdalene Vanstone, and the story about Magdalene is basically she is the illegitimate daughter. And Wilkie Collins uses that topic and her desire for, I don't know if revenge is quite the right word, but her desire to truly inherit what has been promised to her and what she feels like is hers. So he uses that storyline to explore the issues in Victorian England surrounding the idea of illegitimacy and the laws surrounding that, and I'm sure cultural and society's treatment of that. Okay, the next letter that I pulled was the letter A. book prompt that I picked is a book with over 35 chapters in it. This was another pick that when I saw the books that I had under the letter A, I knew without having to open the book that it would probably have over 35 chapters. And that book was Adam Bede by George Eliot. I know very little about Adam Bede other than that I believe it is a character study. And so with that, I believe it studies the motivations of at least Adam Bede, who I assume is the protagonist, if not multiple characters. My guess, having read a little bit of Middlemarch, would be that it's multiple characters. This will be a very interesting read because I tend to not like George Eliot's writing style. So we'll see how I get along with this one. The next letter that I picked was the letter D. And the book prompt that I picked was published last year. So, like I said, in this case, I did not have any books starting with the letter D that were published last year. So I did pull from that jar, and the book that I picked was, oh, I don't know if you can see that because of light. There you go. The Way We Live Now, which I already have 4 books that I picked. So you're probably wondering at this point why I was still picking books. My intention was to pick up to about 3,000 pages worth to read. I read about 100 pages a day, so that's usually about how much I can get through in a month. And I was not expecting to get a book this big, but I'm going to put it on there. I've added a very large book, The Way We Live Now. Yeah, this is going to shoot me way over that 3,000 page goal. This has, my copy anyway, has at least about 800 pages. The Way We Live Now is by Anthony Trollope. I'm sorry, I just realized I don't think I've actually been sharing the names of all the others. Maybe I have. Whatever. Anyway, I don't know much about this book other than that it's one of his works that a lot of people like. I've only read one other book by Anthony Trollope, and that was Barchester, no, not Barchester Towers. It was The Warden. And I enjoyed that. So I'm really looking forward to reading more of his. Unlike quite a few of his series, this is a standalone book. And I really liked the sentence that starts at the back of this book as the description. It says, ruthless greed, relentless self-promotion, corporate swindles, and scandals on a grand scale. Indeed, this sounds like the way we live now. Indeed, it does. Which is interesting because here this, I believe, about Victorian era London. So I'll be interested to learn more, to read more. I'm looking forward to this. Because I'm a glutton for punishment, I decided to pull one more card, and the next card that I pulled was the letter C. Or is it like this? C. That looks right. The letter C. And with that, I pulled the prompt, at risk of being unhauled. Now, I have now pulled 2 C's during this TBR pick. The first one was for Clotel. And what I've decided, because I like adding some extra randomness and chaos to games, is that if I pull 2 letters in for 1 month, that means I need to pick an extra draw at the end. So you will see that happen. So for now, I need to pick a book that starts with the letter C and is at risk of being unhauled. For that, I picked Come Be My Light, so Mother Teresa, as she, I guess, is more popularly known around the world. So this is a short book. I will probably listen to it on audiobook. That tends to be the format that I like nonfiction in. This is at risk of being unhauled because I've had it for a while and have yet to even crack it open, and have thought of unhauling it a couple of times. But I really would like to read this. I've heard various things about it, good and bad, and so I'm very curious. Also, I have always liked Mother Teresa and the work that she's done, so I'm interested to hear about what her own thoughts were. Okay, so for my last draw, which is the extra draw that I have to do, I'm going to pull a letter. Now, just keep in mind that if I pull another repeat letter, I don't have to make an extra draw. So the card that I pulled was the letter L. The prompt that I picked, I don't know if I've mentioned, but I'm picking these prompts out of a jar. I have a jar of prompts. But anyway, the prompt that I picked was child protagonist. This is another one that when I picked it, I went, oh gosh, am I going to end up with another TBR jar pick? Because when I pulled Little Big, which was also an L, uh, I had looked through the letter L's and I only have like 5 or 6 of them. And I was like, I don't think there were any that had a child protagonist in them. But I went and I looked again and I'm glad that I did. I found the book, The Last Samurai by Helen DeWitt. So this is not based on the movie with Tom Cruise in it. This is a completely different story. So I do recommend if you look up anything on this book that you include the author's name because otherwise you do tend to come up with the movie. The Last Samurai is a story that is about a woman who becomes a single mom. So far you're probably saying, Nicole, that's not a child protagonist. And it's not. But this single mom, she ends up having a child, and her child becomes a piano prodigy. And as far as I can tell, this book is about both her and her child's experience of that. And so I believe the child is also a protagonist in this book. At least that's the story I've told myself, and I'm sticking to it, and this is going to work for my book pick. So, yeah, I'm getting desperate. Do I really not want to go into that TBR jar? Apparently, I don't. So, that's the last book that I picked for my TBR. That is not all that will be on my TBR for November, however, because I still need to add on to it my end of year project. So, for my end of year project, I have one large book that I am reading that I will be working on for the next 3 months. So, I started in October. I will be reading it in October, November, and December. And that book is The Tale of Genji. So, this is a huge chunker, so you can see why I personally don't have any ambition to try and finish it in 1 month. So my plan is to read 14 and a half, 15 pages of this a day over the next 3 months, and that should give me enough time to finish it right before the new year, especially with Thanksgiving and Christmas break in the mix there. So the Tale of Genji, if you don't know, is a classic in Japanese literature, and it tells about, I believe, 9th century court life in Imperial Japan. So it tells the story of Genji, who is son of the emperor, but not in the line of succession. And it's a really, really interesting insight into court life during that time period in Japan, about the culture of court life, intrigue in court life, and definitely about romance in court life. There is beautiful poetry in this, and I highly recommend this translation if you've never read it before, because the hardest part of this book is just keeping the characters straight. There are a lot of characters in this, but added to that, the character names change, and it can get complicated. Dennis Washburn has made the effort in his book to keep the character names as consistent from beginning to end as possible. So in that sense, it's not a literal translation of the original work, but it is helpful to first-time readers. If you're intimidated to read a Japanese classic, just know that all the translations I've read of this, which are only 2, but I've glimpsed at parts of others, are fairly easy to read, and the story itself is not complicated and is very easy to break up into chunks as you read along. So I will be reading this book and probably talking about it, especially if I do any reading vlogs. So that's The Tale of Genji, which I will also be adding on to my November TBR. And finally, the last book I will be adding to my November TBR is the reading guide to go along with The Tale of Genji. This is a really nice reading guide, which as soon as I saw it, I knew I wanted to have. Basically, he takes the first 9 chapters, rather, of The Tale of Genji, and the author breaks them down into both a summary of what happened in those 9 chapters and then also gives a commentary on what happened in those 9 chapters. And his commentary is great. He keeps it really simple and straightforward. He really intends this reader's guide just to be for the average person, not to be necessarily an academic breakdown of every single thing that happens. But his commentaries are really good because he highlights aspects of the culture that are important, events that are important, and he also talks about themes that are important and kind of highlights those. And so he kind of felt like the first chapter was enough to do commentary on because that's enough to give you an idea of the repeated themes and sort of give you an idea of where this story is going and things to look out for. And then after chapter 9, he does give chapter summaries of the entire rest of the unabridged book. Which is great. So if you feel like you read a whole chapter and you're kind of like, wait, what just happened? This is a really good book to have. I just like to have summaries of certain books because sometimes if I have questions on something and aren't sure if I understood what happened correctly, then a reader's guide can be really helpful to clear that up. And I also like paper things, so I'd rather have the paper version than to go look up online, but that's also an option. So, this is the last book. I will hold up the stack so you can see everything that I will be reading in November. Here it is. This is every book that I will be reading in November, including The Tale of Genji here. And right here is the reading guide to go with it. All the other books I chose using Scattegories, the card game, to help me. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think there'll be some interesting reads this month. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're excited about what you're reading in November. Feel free to share below your reading list or if you've read any of these books and enjoyed them. So I will see you next time. Bye! I'd wave, but I have to figure out how to put these books down. Thanks. Maybe I should stop the video first.